Right. So do the other potential uses for obesity drugs warrant all this euphoria? Let's ask Dr. Kavita Patel. She's an NBC News medical contributor, former White House policy director during the Obama administration. Dr. Patel, always great to get your perspective. So far, we've gotten a lot of different sorts of studies when it comes to cardiovascular events, when it comes to this flow study, when it comes to sleep apnea. So we're getting drips and drabs here. We know that there are a lot of other trials going on, particularly for Alzheimer's, that Novo Nordisk is doing. How do you regard this drug right now? Is it, in your view, looking like a miracle drug?
Melissa, I'd love to think it was a miracle drug. I'll be honest, I was a little shocked at kind of the precipitous drop in the dialysis companies because none of us were surprised. This trial was halted, as you kind of mentioned earlier, a year in advance because the outcomes were so strong, but they were in diabetics. We know this drug works really well in diabetics, but there are so many barriers to getting there, including cost, adherence, prescriber rate. Go out and survey a lot of doctors. They're not even aware of kind of all the uses. They're just hearing about it on TikTok and thinking about it for weight loss. So I was a little surprised at that kind of sharp decline. However, it is a very big deal. It is a game changer. It is something that is going to absolutely create these secondary effects. In terms of its expansion to kind of be that one drug that cures all ills, all I do is go back to the science, look at its mechanism, that kind of mechanism of inhibiting the glucagon release, which we get after we eat kind of any sort of meal and get that sugar input into our bodies. That is not necessarily the chemical basis of what we know for a lot of things like addiction disorders or other mental health disorders. And those trials, as you pointed out, Melissa, are nowhere near as robust as the data we have on flow, on sleep apnea, on cardiovascular risk, on diabetes control, double-blinded, placebo, randomized controlled trials that are incredible. And we've got like less than 20 patients in a liraglutide trial around mental health and addiction disorders. So, and then rat studies, animal studies, we have a long way to go for that. And I've seen a lot of miracle drugs before. This will probably make the biggest dent in our mortality. And I think that's important to consider.
It's Karen, thanks for being on. So what do you see as a scientist? You look at this, what do you see as the biggest risk for this drug?
Yeah, so the biggest risk is really that we have no long-term studies of this drug. And you've talked about it, Karen, like there are things we just don't know. You're already seeing a kind of a warning that the FDA has put on Ozempic to talk about that kind of stomach paralysis or that intestinal paralysis that can be a symptom and very concerning, potentially even fatal. So we're learning more and more. Remember, in a controlled trial setting, we have a lot of things that we try to control and root out. When you bring it into a broader population and you use it off label, you start to pick up things and you start to see a change in the effect size. Oh, in other words, as you widen the denominator of any drug, you're going to see some of those limitations and signals show up in the numerator. And I think that's what you're seeing. So, but no question, Lilly and Novo Nordisk and kind of Pfizer and thinking about the oral drug and having an oral and intramuscular kind of sub-Q approach for a drug, it gives you a lot of shots on goal because not everybody wants to inject. So oral drugs could be a big game changer in this as well.
Yeah, there are limitations, though, to oral, too, as I understand it, in terms of having to take it a certain time before meals and et cetera. Right. So the timing aspect can be a challenge for people who want to go that route. In terms of specifically for the treatment of chronic kidney disease, CKD, do you think that Ozempic will get that label? And if that happens, I mean, as we see more and more of these studies, is it more likely that insurance reimbursement will be much greater?
Yeah, so right now we are seeing active kind of employers in entire states that are kind of declining to cover on the weight loss indication. It is very hard after looking at this data from Flow, and we'll get kind of final package of the data published in probably in the New England Journal, I would expect. But we'll see a final package of data that'll just be so compelling that it would be wrong not to cover this because it should be superior to what we have available to us. That is something that I think insurance companies will have a difficult time. But Melissa, I have seen a lot of drugs where there are superior data right now, and we don't utilize them. The reason we have patients with chronic kidney disease is because we have uncontrolled, poorly controlled diabetics, not because doctors are doing bad things or patients are doing bad things. We just have an access problem in our country, and it's not easy, as you point out, to stay on all these drugs. So I don't think it's as easy as that. It certainly helps when you have an on-indication label from the Food and Drug Administration. That's just one barrier out of many.
All right. Dr. Patel, always great to get your take. Thank you.
Thanks.